When I arrived at the lakeside vacation house after leaving it empty for a year, I
For
felt that
15
something
years, my
wasn't right.
son and his wife
The
erased me
wallpaper
from
in the
their
living
lives.
room had
No
been
calls,
replaced.
no
That was
visits.
strange,
Not even
considering the place
goodbye.
had been locked
When
the
my
entire
wife
time.
died,
That's
then
when I
my
suddenly
small
remembered the security
landscaping business
cameras I had installed.
exploded.
Back then,
And
my
I
late
sold it
wife had
for
laughed and
$18 million.
joked that the place was so
I
quiet no
bought
one would
a
even bother
massive
setting foot in it.
mansion in
But
Lake
when I
Forest,
replayed the footage from midnight, what appeared on the
ready
screen
to
made the blood
enjoy
in my
my
veins
quiet
freeze.
retirement.
I truly
The
appreciate
very
you
next
being
day,
here
my
with me.
doorbell rang.
Before we go any further,
There
drop
they
a quick
stood with
comment
12
and tell me where
suitcases,
you're watching
smiling like
from.
nothing had happened.
I'd love to see how far
Dad,
this
you've got
story
so much
reaches.
space.
Also, just a quick note.
We're moving in.
This story
They thought I was a
includes some
lonely old
fictional
man
elements
desperate
added
for
for
family.
storytelling
They had no
and
idea
learning
they just walked
purposes.
into.
Any similarities
Biggest
to real
mistake of
people
their
or
lives.
places are purely coincidental.
Thank you so much for being
But the
here
message behind
and
it
taking
is
a
something
moment
I
to listen to
believe
this
can truly
story.
help. The October wind off Lake George carried the smell of wet leaves and cold water, a scent that used to mean peace. Used to. I stood in the living room of the old house, my boots leaving prints in the dust that had settled over the past year. The place looked smaller than I remembered, dimmer. Maybe that was just me. 2 years since Catherine passed, and I still wasn't used to walking into empty rooms alone. I'd driven up from Albany that morning, telling myself it was time to check on the property. Winter was coming, and a house left unattended in the Adirondacks could fall apart. Fast pipes, bursting roof, leaking raccoons, making themselves at home in the attic. Practical reasons, engineer reasons. But the truth sat heavier in my chest. I needed to be somewhere that still remembered her. Somewhere I could almost hear her laugh echoing off the stone fireplace. The drive had been quiet. Too quiet. The leaves were turning burnt orange, deep red, that particular gold you only get in upstate New York in late fall. Catherine would have loved it. She always said October was God showing off. I set my duffel bag down by the door and looked around. Everything seemed intact. The furniture sat under old sheets like ghosts. The stone fireplace still dominated the far wall, cold and dark. The wooden beams overhead hadn't sagged. No water stains on the ceiling, so far so good. Then I noticed the wall. It shouldn't have caught my eye. It was just the east wall of the living room, the one that backed onto the main hallway. But something about it felt wrong. I stepped closer, frowning. The wallpaper was different. Not faded and slightly yellowed like the rest of the room, but fresh. Clean. A soft beige pattern, almost new. I ran my hand over it. Smooth. No dust. That didn't make sense. I hadn't been here in over a year, not since the autumn after Catherine died, when I'd come up to close the place down for the season. And I sure as hell hadn't paid anyone to redecorate. My pulse picked up just a tick. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe the old paper had peeled and someone, maybe my daughter Lauren, maybe my son-in-law Trevor had patched it up as a surprise. They knew I'd been meaning to come back eventually. Maybe they'd wanted to help. But why hadn't they mentioned it? I pulled out my phone and opened the app. I'd almost forgotten I had SecureView, the cloud-based camera system I'd installed 3 years ago. Catherine had laughed when I'd done it. Ha, sombre. Who's going to break into a house in the middle of nowhere, William, she'd teased. But I was an engineer. I liked systems, redundancies, knowing what was happening even when I wasn't there. I'd hidden the cameras well. One in the air vent above the fireplace aimed at the living room, one in the kitchen, one by the back door. Small motion-activated, uploading everything to the cloud. I'd set them up and mostly forgotten about them until now. I scrolled back through the footage, my thumb moving quickly over the screen. Weeks of nothing. Months of stillness. Dust motes drifting in shafts of sunlight, shadows lengthening as the seasons changed. Then I found it. July, 3 months ago. I hit play. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m. The living room was dark except for the glow of a flashlight. 2 figures moved into frame, Lauren and Trevor. My daughter and her husband. I leaned against the wall, phone trembling slightly in my hand, and watched. Lauren was dressed in old jeans and a dark sweatshirt, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. Trevor wore a baseball cap, his face half in shadow. They were both silent, moving carefully, deliberately. Trevor carried a large, rectangular bundle wrapped in black plastic and duct tape. It looked heavy. He set it down gently like it might break. Lauren pulled a utility knife from her pocket and started cutting into the wallpaper. Precise, methodical strokes. She peeled back a section, revealing the drywall underneath. Trevor handed her a small crowbar. She worked it into the seam, prying carefully, until a section of drywall came loose. They worked together, widening the hole. Then Trevor lifted the bundle and slid it into the cavity between the wall studs. It fit snugly, disappearing into the darkness. Lauren pushed the drywall back into place, then pulled out a roll of mesh tape and a small tub of joint compound. She was fast, efficient, like she'd done this before, or practiced. Within 20 minutes, the wall looked almost normal again. They left the room, and the timestamp jumped forward 2 days later, midday. Lauren returned alone, carrying a bucket and a roll of wallpaper. She spent an hour smoothing it over the patched section, blending it seamlessly with the surrounding wall. When she finished, she stepped back, hands on her hips, and nodded, satisfied. Then she looked directly at the camera. I froze. She couldn't have known it was there, could she? But for just a moment, her eyes seemed to lock onto the lens. Then she turned and walked out. The footage ended. I stood there staring at the blank screen, my heart pounding in my ears. The wind outside rattled the windows. Somewhere in the trees, a branch cracked and fell. What the hell had they hidden in that wall? I looked up at the fresh wallpaper. It stared back at me, innocent and clean, keeping its secret. I thought about calling Lauren, asking her straight out. But something stopped me, a cold, crawling feeling in my gut that told me if I asked, she'd lie. Or worse, she'd tell me the truth, and I wouldn't be able to unhear it. Catherine used to say I thought too much. "You're an engineer, William," she'd laugh. "You solve problems. But not everything is a problem to solve." But this was. I walked to the garage, my footsteps echoing on the old wooden floor. The tools were still where I'd left them, hanging on pegboard hooks, dusty but intact. I grabbed a claw hammer and a pry bar. My hands didn't shake. Engineers don't shake. We assess. We plan. We act. I walked back into the living room and stood in front of the wall. The new wallpaper looked even more wrong now, knowing what I knew. Knowing they'd hidden something behind it. Something big enough to need two people, something secret enough to do it in the middle of the night. I hefted the hammer in my right hand, feeling the weight of it, the cold steel, solid and certain. Lauren was my daughter. Trevor was family. I danced with Lauren at her wedding 5 years ago, watched her grow up, taught her how to ride a bike and balance a checkbook and change a tire. I loved her, but I didn't know her. Not anymore. I raised the hammer, aimed at the center of the fresh wallpaper, and hesitated. Once I did this, there was no going back. Whatever was behind that wall, whatever secret they'd buried in the bones of this house, I'd know. And knowing changes everything. The wind howled. The house creaked. I swung. The first blow sent a shockwave up my arm. Plaster dust burst into the air, catching the slanting afternoon light and turning it hazy, gold-tinged, like something out of a dream. Or a nightmare. I hit the wall again. And again. The hammer's claw tore through the fresh wallpaper, ripping the beige pattern into jagged strips. Beneath it, the drywall crumbled soft and chalky, giving way easier than I'd expected. Maybe Lauren and Trevor hadn't reinforced it properly. Maybe they'd been in a hurry. The sound echoed through the empty house, crack, 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 sharp and violent in the silence. Each swing felt like breaking something more than just plaster. Like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. After a dozen strikes, the hole was big enough. I set the hammer down, my breath coming hard, and peered into the gap. There it was, a metal container, dull gray, about the size of a small suitcase. Waterproof by the look of it, rubberized edges, a heavy-duty latch. The kind of thing you'd use to protect something valuable or something dangerous. I reached in fingers, brushing the cold steel, and pulled it free. It was heavier than I'd expected, maybe 15–20 pounds. I set it on the floor, knelt beside it, and flipped the latch. The lid opened with a soft hiss, like it had been sealed tight. Inside, a tablet, 2 USB drives, and a stack of documents bound with rubber bands. Everything was neatly organized, almost clinical. The tablet screen was dark, but when I pressed the power button, it lit up. No password, just a home screen with a handful of apps and a folder labeled CPH_evidence. Crown Property Holdings. I didn't recognize the name, but the documents told me enough. I pulled out the first stack, printed emails, spreadsheets, photocopies of checks made out to numbered accounts. Names I didn't know, but amounts I couldn't ignore. 50,000 here. 120,000 there. Payments labeled as consulting fees and contractor reimbursements. But the memo lines were too vague, the recipients too obscure. I flipped through more pages. Contracts with the City of Albany, bid documents for a waterfront development project, internal memos discussing securing favorable outcomes and managing key relationships. Euphemisms, the kind of language people use when they don't want to say what they're really doing. And then I found the offshore account records. Cayman Islands, British Virgin Islands, shell companies with names like Clearwater Holdings, LLC, and Pinnacle Ventures Group. Millions of dollars moving through channels that were designed to hide where the money came from and where it was going. I sat back on my heels, staring at the papers spread across the dusty floor. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't someone's tax records or old business files. This was evidence. Real, deliberate, meticulously compiled evidence of fraud. Bribery. Maybe worse. And my daughter and her husband had hidden it in my wall. My phone was in my hand before I realized I'd grabbed it. I scrolled to Lauren's number saved under Lauren's cell and hit call. It rang twice. Dad! Her voice was bright, surprised. Happy even. Hey, I wasn't expecting... Lauren. I cut her off, keeping my voice level. We need to talk. Silence. Then quieter. What's wrong? I'm at the lake house. Another pause. Longer this time. I could almost hear her thinking, calculating. Okay, she said slowly. Is everything all right? Did something happen? I found the box, Lauren. The silence that followed was different. Heavier. I could hear her breathing shallow and fast, like she'd just run up a flight of stairs. Dad, listen. What is this? I kept my tone calm but firm. Engineer's voice. Problem solver's voice. There's a metal box in the wall. Documents, a tablet, USB drives, Crown Property Holdings. What is this? Oh, God. Her voice cracked. Dad, you weren't supposed to. We didn't think you'd... Lauren, I waited. Talk to me. She took a shaky breath. When she spoke again, her words came fast, tumbling over each other. Trevor found it at work. He was doing accounting for Crown Property Holdings. Big real estate company, government contracts, all that. He found discrepancies, payments that didn't add up, offshore accounts. He started digging, and Dad, they're doing bad things. Really bad things. Bribing city officials, rigging bids, moving funds to avoid taxes. Trevor made copies. He was going to report it, but she stopped. I heard something that sounded like a sob. But what? They found out. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Someone at the company realized Trevor was looking into things he shouldn't. They threatened him, Dad. They said if he talked, if he went to the authorities, they'd... She broke off. We're scared. Trevor's scared. We didn't know what to do, so he hid the evidence. Somewhere safe. Somewhere they'd never think to look. My house. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We should have asked, but we didn't want to drag you into this. We thought if we just kept quiet, maybe they'd leave us alone. But now you've found it, and—" Her breath hitched. "Dad, please, don't take it to the police. Not yet. If they find out, if the company realizes we still have the evidence, they'll come after Trevor. They'll come after us." I closed my eyes, pressing the heel of my palm against my forehead. Catherine's voice echoed in my head, soft and sad. "She's your daughter, William. She needs you." But something didn't sit right. If Trevor had really wanted to blow the whistle, why hide the evidence in a wall? Why not go straight to the FBI, ask for protection? Whistleblowers had rights, safeguards, unless he wasn't planning to blow the whistle at all. "Lauren," I said carefully, "if Trevor's in danger, the police can protect him. Witness protection, federal marshals, there are systems for this." "No." Her voice was sharp now, almost panicked. "You don't understand. These people, they have connections, money, influence. If we go to the cops now before we have a plan, before we know who we can trust, Dad, please, just put it back. Pretend you never found it. Give us time to figure this out." I looked down at the tablet, the USB drives, the stack of incriminating documents. Evidence of crimes that could put people in prison for years, maybe decades. And my daughter was asking me to hide it. "Oh, Lauren," I said quietly, "I can't do that. Dad, it's like if Trevor's really in danger, the right thing to do is get this evidence into the right hands. People who can actually do something with it. You don't know what you're doing." Her voice broke. "You're going to get him hurt. You're going to get us hurt. Or," I said, "I'm going to get the truth out. And the people who threatened you will be the ones who end up behind bars." She didn't answer. I could hear her crying now, soft and muffled, like she'd covered her mouth with her hand. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," I said, "but I have to do this. Please." I ended the call. For a long moment, I just sat there staring at the phone in my hand. The house was silent again. The wind had died down. Somewhere outside, a crow cawed, harsh and lonely. Catherine would have believed Lauren. She always gave people the benefit of the doubt, always assumed the best. But Catherine wasn't here, and I wasn't sure I believed my daughter anymore. I stood up, knees protesting, and gathered the documents back into the box. I grabbed the USB drives, shoved them into the inner pocket of my jacket, and zipped it shut. The tablet went into my duffel bag. If Trevor was in danger, really in danger, the police would protect him. And if he wasn't, if this was something else entirely, then I needed to know. I picked up the metal box, heavy and cold, in my hands, and headed for the door. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the driveway. My truck sat waiting, dust-covered and patient. I unlocked it, set the box on the passenger seat, and slid behind the wheel. My hands were steady. Engineers' hands. Hands that built things, fixed things, solved problems. But as I turned the key in the ignition, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just broken something I wouldn't be able to fix. I pulled out of the driveway, gravel crunching under the tires, and headed toward town, toward the police station, toward whatever came next. The road curved through the trees, narrow and dark. On both sides, the forest pressed in, close, tall pines and white birch, their branches tangled overhead. The sun had dipped below the ridgeline, leaving the sky a bruised purple. I kept my eyes on the road, hands tight on the wheel. The metal box sat on the passenger seat. 3 miles to town. 3 miles to the Warren County Sheriff's Office. I'd rehearsed what I'd say. I found evidence. Fraud. Bribery. My daughter might be involved. That's when I saw them. 2 black SUVs coming fast in the rearview mirror. At first I thought it was nothing, just someone in a hurry. But they didn't slow down. They stayed right on my bumper, close enough that I could see the glare of their headlights filling the cab of my truck. My pulse kicked up. I pressed the gas. The truck lurched forward 50-55, but the SUVs matched my speed effortlessly. Then they pulled into the oncoming lane and roared past me. I thought they were going to keep going. Then they swerved. Both vehicles cut hard to the right and stopped dead across the road, blocking me. I slammed the brakes. My truck skidded and came to a stop maybe 10 feet from the lead SUV. Dust drifted through my headlights. For a moment, everything was still. Then the doors opened. 4 men stepped out. Dark suits, no ties. Sunglasses even though the sun was gone. Earpieces coiled down into their collars. Professional, not local cops. One of them walked toward my truck, slow and deliberate. He stopped at my window and tapped the glass with one knuckle. "Step out of the vehicle, sir," he said. His voice was calm, almost polite. "We need to talk." I didn't roll it down. "I don't know who you are. We know you have something that doesn't belong to you." He smiled, thin and cold. "Hand it over, and we can all go home." I glanced at the metal box, then back at him. "I don't know what you're talking about." His smile didn't waver. "The box. The documents. Mr. Sterling would like them back. Sterling, Crown Property Holdings, the offshore accounts, the bribes. They'd been watching. How did you—" "Doesn't matter." He gestured to the passenger seat. "Give us the box, Mr. Gardner, and we'll forget this ever happened." He knew my name. I looked past him at the other 3 men. They stood in a loose line, hands clasped. One of them shifted, and I saw the bulge under his jacket, something heavy. "No," I said. His expression didn't change. "That's unfortunate." He stepped back and made a sharp gesture. The other men started moving toward the truck. I grabbed the metal box, shoved the door open, and ran. The forest swallowed me whole. I plunged into the tree's boots, skidding on wet leaves, branches whipping my face. Behind me, I heard shouting and footsteps crashing through the underbrush. "Stop. We just want to talk." I didn't stop. I ran harder, clutching the box against my chest. My lungs burned. 65 years old, and I hadn't run like this in decades. The forest was thick, darker than the road. I stumbled over roots, caught myself on tree trunks, kept going. The men behind me were faster, younger, but the trees were dense enough that they couldn't see me clearly. I ducked behind a wide pine and tried to catch my breath. My heart hammered in my chest. Footsteps close. "He went this way. Spread out. Check the ravine." I forced myself to move. Quiet. Careful. I slipped between 2 birch trees, their white bark glowing faintly, and kept low. A branch snapped behind me. I didn't look back. I just ran. I don't know how long I was in those woods. 10 minutes. 15. Everything was breathing and running, and the cold air burning my throat. The box felt heavier with every step, corners digging into my ribs. Then I saw light. Headlights. A road. I pushed through the last thicket of brush, stumbled onto the shoulder of a 2-lane highway, and nearly collapsed. My chest heaved. I caught myself on a road sign, Route 9. Headlights swept around the curve, a single vehicle moving slow. I stepped into the road, waving my arms. "Help, somebody help!" The car slowed. Brake lights flared. A patrol car. Warren County Sheriff, blue and white. The driver's side door opened and a young officer stepped out. Early 30s, clean-cut nameplate reading Sanders. He rested one hand on his belt. "Sir, are you all right?" I must have looked like hell. Muddy, scratched, bleeding from cuts on my face and hands. Out of breath. "There are men," I gasped. "Chasing me. In the woods. They blocked the road, tried to take this." I held up the box. "Please. I need help." Officer Sanders glanced past me into the dark forest. His hand moved closer to his radio. "Who's chasing you?" I don't know. 4 of them. Black SUVs. They knew my name. They work for Vincent Sterling. Crown Property Holdings." The words tumbled out. "This is evidence. Federal evidence. Fraud, bribery. I was trying to bring it to the police." His expression shifted. Recognition, maybe. Or concern. He pulled the radio from his belt. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I need backup on Route 9 mile marker 47. Possible assault, possible federal case. Contact the FBI field office in Albany. The words FBI sent a wave of relief through me. Come on. Sanders gestured to the patrol car. Get in. You're safe now. I climbed into the back seat, still holding the box. The door closed solid and heavy, and for the first time since I'd seen those SUVs, I felt like I could breathe. Sanders got back in the driver's seat, eyes on the rearview mirror. You see anyone following you out of the woods? I shook my head. I don't think so. Once I got to the road, they stopped. He nodded. FBI's about 40 minutes out. We'll wait here. Thank you, I said quietly. He glanced back. You did the right thing, sir. Whatever's in that box, it'll be safer with the feds. I hoped he was right. My phone buzzed. I pulled it from my pocket, expecting I don't know. Lauren, maybe. But the screen showed a number I didn't recognize. No name. Just digits. A text message. I opened it. You should have stayed out of this. Now it's too late. I stared at the words. Another message appeared. Mr. Sterling knows where you live, where your family lives. Walk away while you still can. Officer Sanders glanced back. Everything okay? I didn't answer. I just stared at the phone, at the cold threat glowing on the screen. How did they get my number? How long had they been watching? And if they knew where I lived? If they knew about Lauren, about my nephew Jonathan, what else did they know? I looked up out the window into the dark forest. Somewhere out there, they were still watching, waiting. I sat in the back of the patrol car, phone clutched in my hand, scrolling to Jonathan's number. My fingers were still shaking. Officer Sanders was on the radio up front, his voice low and calm as he coordinated with dispatch. Outside, the forest was dark and silent, the only light coming from the patrol car's slow flashing blues. I hit call. Jonathan picked up on the second ring. Uncle William. His voice was alert, concerned. It's late. Is everything okay? I opened my mouth, and for a moment nothing came out. Then, Jonathan, I need help. Silence. Then quieter. What happened? I told him. Fast, breathless, the words tumbling over each other. The house, the hidden box, Crown Property Holdings. Lauren's panicked phone call, the men in black SUVs, the chase through the woods, the threatening texts. When I finished, Jonathan was quiet for a long moment. Uncle William, he said finally, are you hurt? No, I'm with a sheriff's deputy, Route 9 outside Lake George. He called the FBI. Good. Jonathan's voice shifted sharper, now professional. Don't say anything to anyone else until they get there. The FBI will handle it. I'll make some calls, make sure they know your family. Jonathan the First. My voice cracked. I don't know what's happening. Lauren said Trevor was in danger, but these men, they knew my name. They knew where I was going. I know. His tone softened. Listen to me. You did the right thing. You're going to be okay. I'll fly out tomorrow if you need me. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Thank you. Stay safe, Uncle William. The line went dead. I lowered the phone and stared out the window. The forest stared back. 40 minutes later, a dark sedan pulled up behind the patrol car. No sirens, no flashing lights, just headlights cutting through the dark. 2 agents stepped out. The first was a woman in her mid-40s, short brown hair, sharp eyes, wearing a dark suit and a badge clipped to her belt. She walked straight to Officer Sanders, who'd gotten out to meet her. Agent Emily Harrison, FBI Albany. She said, showing her ID. Behind her, a younger agent, dark hair pulled back, carrying a tablet, gave me a brief nod through the window. Agent Natalie Rivera. Officer Sanders gestured to the patrol car. He's in the back. Says he has federal evidence. Fraud, bribery, the works. And he was chased by armed men. Harrison's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. She walked to my door and opened it. Mr. Gardner. Her voice was calm, measured. I'm Agent Harrison. Can you step out, please? I climbed out, legs stiff, still clutching my phone. Rivera approached with the tablet, already taking notes. Tell me what happened, Harrison said. I told her. Again. Slower this time, more details. The vacation house, the hidden box, the documents, the USB drives the tablet, Crown Property Holdings, Lauren and Trevor, the men who'd blocked the road. When I showed her the threatening texts, her jaw tightened. Do you still have the evidence? She asked. In Officer Sanders's trunk, the metal box. Harrison nodded to Rivera, who walked to the patrol car. Sanders popped the trunk, and Rivera carefully lifted out the box, setting it on the hood under the patrol car's lights. She opened it, photographed everything, then began sealing the USB drives and documents in evidence bags. Harrison watched, then turned back to me. Mr. Gardner, Crown Property Holdings isn't new to us. We've been investigating them for 2 years, fraud, bid rigging, bribing city officials. But we've never had hard evidence. She paused. Well, until now, you just handed us the missing piece. Relief and dread washed over me in equal measure. What about my daughter? I asked. And her husband Lauren said they were being threatened. Why too? We'll send agents to their home tonight, Harrison said. If there's a credible threat, we'll bring them in for their protection. In the meantime, you're coming with us. Where? Secure location. Albany. Vincent Sterling, the man who owns Crown Property Holdings, is dangerous. He has money connections and a long reach. You're not safe out here. I glanced at Officer Sanders. He gave me a small nod. You're in good hands, sir. The drive to Albany took 30 minutes. I sat in the back seat of the FBI sedan, Harrison driving Rivera up front with her tablet. Outside, the highway was dark and empty, just the occasional truck rolling past. I stared out the window, exhausted, my mind spinning. How had this day started? I'd driven to the lake house to check on the property, to remember Catherine, to feel something other than loneliness. And now I was in federal custody, running from men with earpieces and threats, holding evidence of crimes I didn't fully understand. Mr. Gardner. I looked up. Harrison was watching me in the rearview mirror. You did the right thing, she said. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you did. I nodded, not trusting my voice. The secure location was a small apartment building in a quiet residential neighborhood. No signs, no logos, just a plain door and a young agent standing guard outside. Harrison led me inside, up a narrow flight of stairs, and into a room on the second floor. It was simple, single-bed metal desk, thick curtains over the window. Clean, sterile, functional. My bathroom's through there, Harrison said, pointing. There's water in the fridge and we'll bring you something to eat. You'll be safe here. I set my jacket on the desk and turned to face her. What happens now? Tomorrow we'll need you to walk us through everything in detail. We'll go over the documents, the footage from your security cameras, your conversation with your daughter, and we'll arrange for you to speak with her. Will she tell you the truth? The question came out before I could stop it. Harrison paused. Her expression was unreadable. We'll find out, she said. She stepped toward the door, then stopped. Get some rest, Mr. Gardner. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. The door closed. The lock clicked softly. I stood there for a moment alone in the silent room, and finally let myself sit down on the edge of the bed. My whole body ached. My hands were still shaking. But for the first time since I'd swung that hammer into the wall of my vacation home, I felt like I could breathe. I didn't sleep much. When the knock came at the door the next morning, I was already awake, staring at the ceiling, watching the pale light creep through the edges of the heavy curtains. Mr. Gardner. Agent Harrison's voice, calm and professional, filtered through the door. May I come in? I sat up, rubbing my face. Yeah, come in. The lock clicked, and she stepped inside, carrying a tablet and a paper cup of coffee. She set the coffee on the desk, black, no sugar, like she'd known somehow, and pulled up the chair across from me. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Tired," I said honestly. "Confused." She nodded. "I understand. But we need to go over a few things this morning. The sooner we move, the better chance we have of keeping you and your family safe." I reached for the coffee, grateful for something to hold. "What did you find?" Harrison opened the tablet, swiped through a few screens, then turned it toward me. "We ran a financial background check on you last night. Standard procedure. And we found this." The screen showed a bank statement. Cayman Islands International Bank. Account holder William Gardner. Address Lake George, New York. Social security number mine. Balance $350,000. I stared at it, the numbers blurring. "That's not mine." "Did I know?" Harrison said. "We cross-referenced with your tax returns, your credit history, your bank records. You've never opened an offshore account. This is identity theft." "How?" My voice cracked. I cleared my throat and tried again. "How did they get my information?" Social security numbers aren't hard to obtain if you have the right connections. Your daughter works at a bank. Your son-in-law had access to Crown Property Holdings' internal systems. Either of them could have pulled your information without you knowing. I set the coffee down, hands shaking. "Lauren wouldn't..." Mr. Gardner." Harrison's tone was gentle but firm. "The account was opened in August of this year. 1 month after your daughter and her husband hid that evidence in your wall. August. 1 month after the security footage I'd seen. 1 month after they'd cut into my wallpaper and buried a metal box full of incriminating documents. Why'd I asked? Why would they do this? To frame you," Harrison said. "If this case ever went public, if Sterling's company was investigated, they'd point to this account. They'd say you were part of it, that you took payments, that you were complicit. It's a classic misdirection." I closed my eyes, trying to process it. My own daughter. My own name attached to crimes I'd never committed. "There's more," Harrison said. I opened my eyes. She swiped to another screen, text messages. The same ones I'd received the night before. "You should have stayed out of this. Now it's too late." And the second, "Mr. Sterling knows where you live, where your family lives." "We traced the number," Harrison said. "Burner phone purchased with cash in Albany 2 days ago. We're working on getting security footage from the store, but it'll take time, so we don't know who sent it." Not yet. But the phrasing is interesting. "Mr. Sterling knows where you live." It's a direct reference to Vincent Sterling. Whoever sent this either works for him or wants us to think they do. I rubbed my temples, feeling the weight of it all pressing down. "What about Lauren and Trevor?" "We sent agents to their home last night," Harrison said. "Your daughter agreed to come in for questioning. She's here now." My stomach dropped. "She's here," Harrison nodded. "In an interview room downstairs. We'd like you to observe if you're up for it. You won't be in the room just behind the glass, but it might help us understand what she knows." The observation room was small and cold, lit by a single overhead light. Through the one-way mirror, I could see Lauren sitting at a metal table, hands folded in her lap. She looked smaller than I remembered. Thinner. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and there were dark circles under her eyes. She looked like Catherine. The same blue eyes, the same way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous, but her expression was closed, guarded. Agent Rivera sat across from her, tablet in hand. Harrison stood beside me, arms crossed, watching. "To Mrs. Mason," Rivera said, her tone even. "Can you explain why evidence from Crown Property Holdings was hidden in your father's vacation home?" Lauren shook her head. "I don't know what you're talking about." "We have security footage," Rivera continued, "from July of this year. It shows you and your husband Trevor entering the house at night, cutting into a wall and hiding a metal container. Do you deny that?" Lauren's jaw tightened. We didn't mean to. Didn't mean to what? She looked down at her hands. Trevor was scared. He found something at work. Something bad. He didn't know what to do, and so he hid it in your father's house. He thought it would be safe there, that no one would look. And the offshore account, Rivera tapped the tablet. The one in your father's name. Did you open that? Lauren's head snapped up. No. I would never. You work at a bank, Mrs. Mason. You have access to personal information, social security numbers, addresses. I didn't open that account. Her voice was rising, now shaky. I don't know anything about it. Rivera leaned forward. Where is your husband, Mrs. Mason? Lauren hesitated. I don't know. You don't know where your husband is. He's been. She stopped biting her lip. He's been stressed. At work. He said he needed space. He didn't tell me where he was going. Mrs. Mason, we have evidence that Trevor has been in contact with Bradley Lawson. Are you familiar with that name? Lauren's face went pale. I know, I don't. Bradley Lawson is a real estate developer, a competitor of Vincent Sterling. We believe your husband has been selling information to both men, playing them against each other. No. Lauren shook her head harder now. Trevor wouldn't. Wouldn't what commit fraud, betray his employer, put your family in danger? Lauren's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. She just sat there shaking her head, her lips pressed into a thin line. Rivera sat back. Mrs. Mason, if you want us to help you, if you want us to protect you, you need to tell us the truth. Lauren looked up straight at the one-way mirror, like she knew I was there. I don't know anything, she said quietly. I just want my father to be safe. Harrison turned to me. Do you believe her? I stared at Lauren through the glass. Her face so much like Catherine's. Her voice small and scared, but her eyes wouldn't meet the camera. She knew we were watching. She knew I was on the other side of that glass, and she was lying. No, I said quietly. I don't, Harrison nodded. Neither do I. She gestured to the door. Come on. Let's get you back upstairs. We'll keep her here for now, see if her story changes. I followed her out, but I couldn't stop looking back. At Lauren sitting alone at that table, her hands folded like she was praying. I barely recognized her. This wasn't the little girl I'd taught to ride a bike. This wasn't the woman who'd cried at her mother's funeral and held my hand and promised we'd get through it together. This was someone else, someone I didn't know. That night I lay in the narrow bed staring at the ceiling. Sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lauren's face behind the glass, her voice calm and measured, saying she didn't know anything. Her eyes avoiding the camera, lying. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, the screen casting a pale glow across the room. I opened my messages and scrolled to the threats from the night before. You should have stayed out of this. Now it's too late. Mr. Sterling knows where you live, where your family lives. Walk away while you still can. Agent Harrison had told me earlier that they'd traced the number. Bradley Lawson. A local developer, ambitious and ruthless, always looking for an edge against Crown Property Holdings. He'd been buying information from Trevor, playing both sides, trying to leverage the evidence for his own gain. But why threaten me? What did he have to gain by scaring me off? I stared at the messages until my eyes burned, then set the phone down. A soft knock at the door. I sat up. Come in. The lock clicked, and Agent Harrison stepped inside, her expression tight. Mr. Gardner, I'm sorry to disturb you, but we have news. My stomach dropped. What happened? Your son-in-law, Trevor Mason, he's missing. I stood, heart pounding. Missing. Your daughter called it in an hour ago. She says he left home this morning and never came back. We sent agents to their house. There are signs of forced entry, broken lock, overturned furniture. It looks like a struggle. I sank back onto the edge of the bed, trying to process it. Do you think he's... We don't know yet, Harrison said carefully. It's possible Sterling's people took him, or Lawson's. Trevor's been playing both sides, selling information to both men. Either one of them could have decided he was more trouble than he was worth. Or he's hiding, I said quietly. Harrison raised an eyebrow. You think this is staged? I don't know what to think anymore. I rubbed my face, exhausted. Lauren lied to you today. About the offshore account. About not knowing what Trevor was doing. If she's lying about that, maybe she's lying about this too. Harrison nodded slowly. We're considering that possibility. In the meantime, we're treating this as a credible threat. Your daughter is under protection, and you're staying here. She turned to leave, then paused. Get some rest, Mr. Gardner. We'll have more answers in the morning. The door closed. The lock clicked, and I was alone again. I didn't rest. I couldn't. I picked up my phone and opened the photo gallery, scrolling back through years of pictures. Birthdays, holidays, trips to the lake house, and then I found her. Catherine. The photo was from 4 years ago, autumn 2019. We were at the lake house, standing on the porch, the trees behind us, a riot of gold and red. Catherine's hair was just starting to gray, salt and pepper, pulled back in a loose bun. She was smiling, her blue eyes warm and bright, one hand resting on my shoulder. She'd been 61, healthy, strong, full of life. I remembered that weekend. She'd spent the afternoon planting mums along the front walk, her hands covered in dirt, humming some old song I didn't recognize. I'd stood on the porch watching her work, thinking how lucky I was. She could live forever, I'd thought, but she didn't. 2 years later, 2021, Catherine started getting tired. Little things at first. She'd sit down after climbing the stairs, breathing hard. Her ankles would swell by the end of the day. She'd wake up in the middle of the night gasping for air. I took her to the doctor. Tests, scans, blood work. The diagnosis came back congestive heart failure. Common in women her age, the doctor said. We'd manage it with medication. She'd be fine. But she wasn't fine. Over the next 6 months, she got weaker. She stopped gardening, stopped cooking. Some days, she barely got out of bed. Lauren came by more often during that time. She'd sit with her mother, hold her hand, make her tea. Herbal tea, chamomile lavender, something that smelled sweet and soothing. Catherine would drink it gratefully, smiling at her daughter. You're such a good girl, she'd say. And Lauren would smile back. Anything for you, Mom. I'd thought it was kindness, devotion. Now staring at Catherine's photo, I wasn't so sure. Catherine passed away in October 2021. I woke up one morning, rolled over to kiss her, and she was gone. Peaceful, the doctor said. No pain. Her heart had simply stopped. The medical examiner agreed. Heart failure, natural causes, no signs of anything unusual. I'd believed them. Why wouldn't I? But now I couldn't stop thinking about the tea. Lauren had made it for Catherine every night. It'll help you sleep, Mom. And Catherine, trusting, grateful, had drunk it down. What if it wasn't just tea? What if there'd been something else in it? Something that mimicked heart failure. Something that a tired, overworked medical examiner wouldn't think to look for. Digitalis. The word surfaced in my mind, cold and sharp. I'd read about it once, years ago, in a book Catherine had been reading, some mystery novel. Digitalis came from foxglove plants. It was used to treat heart conditions, but in high doses it was deadly. It caused irregular heartbeat, fatigue, nausea symptoms that looked exactly like heart failure. And it was nearly impossible to detect unless you were looking for it. I thought about Lauren working at a bank with access to information resources connections. I thought about Trevor, desperate and scared, willing to do anything Lauren told him. I thought about Catherine, weak and trusting, drinking the tea her daughter made for her every single night. No. I whispered aloud. No, she wouldn't. But the doubt was there now, a seed planted deep, growing roots. I looked down at my phone at Catherine's photo. her smile frozen in time, her eyes so much like Lauren's. "What happened to you, Catherine?" I whispered. The room was silent. The wind rattled the window, and somewhere in the back of my mind, a terrible answer was beginning to take shape. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I couldn't sit in this room staring at the ceiling, waiting for the FBI to connect dots that might never form a picture. If Lauren had done something to Catherine, if she'd planned it, orchestrated it, then I needed proof. Real proof. Not suspicions. Not theories. I needed to know. Outside my door, I heard Agent Rivera's voice, low and professional, talking to someone on her phone. "Yeah, I'll grab coffee. Be back in 10. Footsteps. The faint creak of the stairwell door opening, then closing. I waited 30 seconds. Then I moved. The bathroom window was small, but I was smaller than I used to be, 65, and lean all the weight I'd carried in my 50s, worn away by grief and sleepless nights. I jimmied the latch, pushed the window open, and stuck my head out. Second floor, maybe 12 feet to the ground. Below me, a narrow awning stretched over the building's side entrance. I took a breath, gripped the window frame, and climbed out. The awning held. I slid down, hung by my fingertips for a moment, then dropped. My knees jarred on impact, but I stayed upright. I ducked behind a dumpster, heart hammering, and waited. No shouts, no alarms. I walked quickly through the quiet residential neighborhood, pulled out my phone, and called a local car service. 5 minutes later, a sedan pulled up, and I climbed in. "Where to?" the driver asked. "Downtown," I said. "Corner of State and Pearl." He nodded and pulled away. I didn't look back. The coffee shop was small and crowded, the kind of place where no one pays attention to anyone else. I ordered black coffee, sat in the back corner, and pulled out my phone. A new message waited. Unknown number. "Mr. Gardner, we need to talk. I have information about your daughter. Meet me at the old warehouse on River Street. Come alone." 11 a.m. I stared at the message. No signature, but I knew who it was. Bradley Lawson, the man who'd sent the threats. The man who'd been buying information from Trevor. The man the FBI said was dangerous. But if he had answers, if he knew something about Lauren, I had to hear it. I drained the coffee, left cash on the table, and walked out. The warehouse was a crumbling red brick building on the edge of the river, windows, shattered graffiti crawling up the walls. The kind of place that had been forgotten by everyone except people who didn't want to be found. I pushed open the rusted metal door and stepped inside. It was dark, lit only by pale shafts of sunlight filtering through the broken windows. Dust hung in the air. Wooden crates were stacked haphazardly, and the floor was littered with debris, shattered glass, old pallets, scraps of metal. "Mr. Gardner," I spun. A man stepped out from behind a stack of crates. Early 50s, wearing a rumpled gray suit and a loosened tie. His hair was salt and pepper, his face unshaven, eyes shadowed with exhaustion. He held his hands up, palms out, showing he was unarmed. "I'm Bradley Lawson," he said. "Thank you for coming. I know you don't trust me, but hear me out." "You threatened me," I said. My voice was steady, but my heart was pounding. "You sent those messages. Walk away while you still can." "I did." He lowered his hands slowly. "And I meant it. Not because I wanted to hurt you, but because I was trying to protect you. You walked into something bigger than you realize." "Then explain it," I said. He gestured to a crate. "Sit, please." I didn't sit. I stayed on my feet, ready to run if I had to. Lawson sighed and leaned against a crate. "Your son-in-law came to me 3 months ago. Trevor Mason. He said he had evidence against Crown Property Holdings, Vincent Sterling's company. Fraud, bribery, offshore accounts, the whole 9 yards. He wanted to sell it to me." "Why you?" "Because I'm Sterling's competition. I've been trying to outbid Crown Property for city contracts for years. If Sterling went down, I'd be first in line." He rubbed his face. "I paid Trevor $75,000 for exclusive access to the evidence. But it wasn't exclusive. No. Lawson's jaw tightened. I found out later he'd sold the same evidence to Sterling. He was playing both of us, trying to get paid twice. The fool thought he could outsmart everyone. And Lauren, I asked, "What does she have to do with this?" Lawson's expression darkened. At first I thought Trevor was the mastermind. But then I started digging. The offshore account in your name, it was opened from a computer at Lauren's workplace. She's a bank manager, Mr. Gardner. She has access to personal information, social security numbers, addresses, everything. I felt cold. She opened the account. She did. And she framed you. Made it look like you were part of Sterling's operation. If this ever went public, Sterling would go down, but so would you. Your daughter would walk away clean. Why would she do that? Money, power. Maybe she's just greedy. Lawson shrugged. Or maybe she's desperate. Either way, she's been planning this for months. Maybe longer. Trevor's just a puppet. She's the one pulling the strings. I shook my head, trying to process it. You're saying my daughter orchestrated all of this? The evidence, the offshore account, the threats. Yes. Why should I believe you? Lawson reached into his jacket slowly, carefully, and pulled out a small USB drive. He held it out. This has text messages, emails, bank transfers, all pointing back to Lauren. Trevor kept copies of everything. He was smart enough to know she might turn on him. I stared at the USB. Where did you get this? I have people who know how to find things. Lawson's voice was flat. There's more. At her house. In the basement. Trevor kept a backup of everything, physical documents, a second USB, maybe more. He was scared, Mr. Gardner. Scared of what she'd do if he didn't have insurance. I took the USB, my hand trembling. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm in over my head. Lawson's voice cracked. Sterling thinks I'm working with you. Your daughter thinks I'm a threat. The FBI's closing in. If I don't clear my name soon, I'm done. I need you to take this to the FBI. Show them what she did, or we're all going down. I looked at him, this desperate, disheveled man who'd threatened me, who'd tried to buy evidence, who was now begging me to save him. How do I know you're telling the truth? I asked. Check the USB, Lawson said. Check her basement. Then decide. He stepped back, hands raised again. I'm taking a risk meeting you here. If Sterling's people find out, or if your daughter does, I'm as good as gone. So please, do the right thing. He turned and walked toward the back of the warehouse, disappearing into the shadows. I stood there alone, holding the USB. Outside, the sun was high and cold. I walked back to the car, got in, and sat there for a long time, staring at the small piece of plastic in my hand. Could Lauren really have done this? Could she have framed me? Manipulated Trevor? Opened an account in my name? Could she have planned Catherine's? I couldn't finish the thought, but somewhere deep down I knew. I had to see for myself. If you're still here, comment "still watching." So I know you're with me on this journey. And I need to ask you something. If it were you standing in front of a secret buried by your own family, would you keep digging until you found the truth? Or stop before everything falls apart? Tell me honestly in the comments. And before we go any further, just a quick note. The next part of this story includes some dramatized elements to enhance the experience. It may not fully reflect real-life events. If you're not comfortable continuing, this is your moment to step away. Lauren's house sat on a quiet street in suburban Albany, a modest 2-story with a small front yard and faded blue siding. I pulled up to the curb and cut the engine. The windows were dark. No lights. No cars in the driveway. The lawn was overgrown, like no one had been home in days. She was still with the FBI. And Trevor, wherever he was real or staged, wasn't here either. I sat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the house I'd visited 100 times. Birthday parties, Thanksgiving dinners, The place where my daughter had built a life, or so I'd thought. I grabbed the USB from my pocket, got out and walked around to the back. The backyard was small and unkempt. A rusted swing set. A garden bed choked with weeds. And in the corner near the fence, a slanted metal door, the bulkhead entrance to the basement. I crouched down, tried the handle, locked. I looked around, no neighbors watching, no curtains twitching, and grabbed a flat rock from the garden bed. 3 hard strikes, and the old lock gave way. I pulled the door open. Concrete steps led down into darkness. I turned on my phone's flashlight and descended. The basement smelled like damp concrete and old cardboard. My light swept across stacks of boxes, an ancient furnace, a washer and dryer, a row of metal shelves cluttered with paint cans and Christmas decorations. In the far corner, half hidden behind a stack of plastic bins, was an old wooden filing cabinet. I crossed the room, pulled the bins aside, and yanked open the bottom drawer. It was there, a metal container smaller than the first dull gray and locked with a simple latch. I pried it open. Inside, a stack of printed emails, receipts, photos of a computer screen showing search history. And on top, folded carefully, a letter. Handwritten. 4 pages lined notebook paper ink, smudged in places like the writer's hand had been shaking. I unfolded it. Dear William, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. My breath caught. Trevor. I sat down on an overturned crate and started reading. I met Lauren 4 years ago. She was smart, beautiful, confident. I fell for her fast. But I didn't see who she really was. Before we even started dating, she'd already researched digitalis. I found her search history on an old laptop later, digitalis side effects. How long does digitalis take to act? Digitalis and heart failure. I didn't understand why. Not until it was too late. My hands tightened on the paper. In 2021, Catherine started getting sick, tired, short of breath. The doctors said it was heart failure, but it wasn't. Lauren had been giving her mother tea every night, herbal tea, she said. Chamomile and lavender. But there was something else in it. Digitalis, from foxglove plants. She grew them in the backyard, dried the leaves, ground them into powder. Catherine drank it for 6 months. Every night. And every night, a little more built up in her system. The doctors never suspected. Digitalis mimics heart failure, perfectly irregular heartbeat, fatigue, nausea. By the time Catherine passed away, it looked completely natural. I stopped reading. The basement tilted. I forced myself to keep going. I found out 3 months after Catherine was gone. Lauren left her laptop open. I saw the search history, the receipts, the photos of the foxglove plants in the garden. I confronted her. She didn't deny it. She looked at me and said she was going to find out about the money. I had no choice. I should have gone to the police. But I was scared. She said if I told anyone, she'd say I did it. That I forced her. That I was the one who researched it. I believed her. I was a coward. My vision blurred. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand and kept reading. Now she's planning to do the same to you. She took out a life insurance policy on you. $2 million. June 2023. She forged your signature. If something happens to you, she gets everything. She's been talking about an accident at the lake house. A fall. Drowning. Something that looks natural. William, I'm so sorry. I should have stopped her. I should have told you years ago. If you're reading this, please go to the FBI. Show them this letter. Show them the evidence. Don't let her get away with it. I'm leaving this here because I don't trust anyone else. Lauren's watching me. I think she knows I'm scared. I think she's planning something for me, too. Please, do the right thing. For Catherine. For yourself. I'm sorry. Trevor. The letter ended. I sat there staring at the last line, the ink smudged where Trevor's hand had trembled. She'd done it. Lauren had given Catherine tea. Every night. For 6 months. And every night she'd put a little more poison into it. A little more digitalis. Slow, methodical, undetectable. And Catherine, trusting grateful, had drunk it down. "You're such a good daughter," she'd said. And Lauren had smiled. I thought about the garden at the lake house. The mums Catherine had planted. The flowers Lauren used to help her water. Had there been foxglove there too? Had Lauren grown it right under our noses, harvested it, dried it, ground it into powder? Had she stood in our kitchen brewing tea, measuring out the dose, watching her mother's health fail day by day? And then, after Catherine was gone, had she started planning the same thing for me? I looked down at the printouts in the box. Photos of Lauren's search history, digitalis dosage, undetectable poisons, how to fake heart failure, all dated 2020, a full year before Catherine got sick. She'd been planning it for over a year, and Trevor had known. For 3 months after Catherine's passing, he'd known. And he'd said nothing. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't hold me. I sank to my knees on the cold concrete floor, still clutching the letter. My daughter, my little girl, the one I'd taught to ride a bike, the one who'd cried at her mother's funeral and held my hand and promised we'd get through it together. She'd done this. She'd ended Catherine's life. Slowly, deliberately, for money, and she'd been planning to do the same to me. "Lauren," I whispered. My voice cracked. "How could you do this?" The basement was silent. Somewhere above me the house creaked, and I stayed there on my knees, holding the letter, the evidence of my daughter's choices, clutched in my shaking hands. I forced myself to keep reading. There was more. "William, there's one more thing you need to know. In June of this year, Lauren took out a life insurance policy on you. $2 million. She forged your signature on the application. If something happens to you, if you have an accident, she's the sole beneficiary. She's been talking about it for months. An accident at the lake house, a fall down the stairs, drowning in the lake. Something that would look natural. She said old men have accidents all the time. No one will question it." I stopped breathing. $2 million. She'd been planning it, planning my passing, my own daughter. I thought back to June 2023. Lauren had visited me in Albany on a Sunday afternoon. She'd brought sandwiches from the deli turkey and Swiss Catherine's favorite. We'd sat at my kitchen table and she'd asked casually, "Dad, do you still have all your documents in order? Your will insurance, that kind of thing?" I'd thought it was responsible. She worked at a bank. She understood planning. "Studying most of it," I'd said. "Why? I'm helping a friend set up a scholarship fund. I wanted to make sure you had everything sorted." She'd smiled. "I'd be happy to look over your paperwork, make sure everything's current." I'd agreed. I'd pulled out the folder: birth certificate, social security card, tax returns. I'd left her alone for 10 minutes while I took Jonathan's call. When I came back, she was closing the folder. "Everything looks good, Dad." She'd taken photos. I knew that now. My social security number, my signature, everything she needed. And I'd handed it to her. I couldn't let that happen. 2 weeks ago, I contacted the FBI. I gave them everything: the search history, the digitalis research, the insurance policy, the offshore accounts. They told me to act normal, to keep Lauren calm. They said they'd handle it. I don't know if I'll survive this, but I hope you do. Please, go to the FBI, show them this letter. Don't let her get away with what she did to Catherine, and don't let her do it to you. Trevor. The letter ended. I sat there staring at the last line, my hands shaking so badly the paper rattled. She'd planned it. Every step. The tea, the foxglove, the slow buildup of digitalis in Catherine's system. And then once Catherine was gone, she'd moved on to me. $2 million. A fall. Drowning. An accident. Old men have accidents all the time. I pulled out another document, the forged insurance application. My signature at the bottom, shaky, not quite right, but close enough. Beneficiary Lauren Marie Gardner. Payout $2 million. Effective date June 15th, 2023. 3 days after her visit, I thought about the lake house. The stairs to the second floor, steep, narrow, no railing on one side. Catherine had asked me to install one in 2018. "Will those stairs are dangerous," she'd said. "One of us is going to fall." "I'll get to it," I'd promised. But I never did. Had Lauren counted on that? Had she studied those stairs, calculating how a 65-year-old man might fall? I found more printouts. Lauren's search history from summer 2023. How to make drowning look accidental. Elderly fall death statistics. Life insurance payout investigation triggers. She'd researched it all. The same methodical planning she'd used for Catherine. There was a small envelope in the box. Inside a second USB drive and a post-it in Trevor's handwriting. "William, backup of everything. If something happens to me, give this to FBI till." I slipped it into my jacket pocket. Trevor had been scared. His shaky writing showed it. He'd known Lauren was dangerous, and he'd tried to stop her anyway. Light flooded the basement. I jerked my head up, blinking against the sudden brightness. Footsteps. Multiple. Coming down the concrete stairs. "Mr. Gardner." Agent Harrison's voice calm and firm. "Step away from the evidence." I scrambled to my feet, or tried to. My legs were numb, unsteady. I grabbed the edge of the filing cabinet to keep from falling. Harrison descended the stairs, flashlight and one-hand badge clipped to her belt. Behind her, Agent Rivera and 2 other agents I didn't recognize. All of them armed. All of them watching me. "Agent Harrison," I managed. I found... we know." She stopped a few feet away, her expression unreadable. "We've been following you since you left the safe house this morning." "How long?" I asked. "Since you climbed out the bathroom window," Harrison said. No judgment, just facts. "We had an agent outside. He radioed in. We tracked your phone. You were using me." "We were protecting you," Harrison corrected. "And gathering evidence. Bradley Lawson's been on our radar for months. We knew he'd been buying information from Trevor. We suspected he'd try to use you." She paused. "We had agents nearby the entire time. If Lawson had tried anything, we would have intervened." I pulled the second USB Lawson's from my pocket. "He gave me this." Harrison nodded to Rivera, who held out her gloved hand. I handed it over. Rivera bagged it. "We'll analyze both drives." "When Trevor came to you," I asked. Harrison's expression softened. 2 weeks ago, Tuesday morning. No appointment, no lawyer. Just him carrying a backpack full of documents. He was terrified, Mr. Gardner. But he told us everything, and you let Lauren stay free. We put her under 24-hour surveillance, every move, but we needed physical evidence, the insurance documents, digitalis research search history, and we needed to make sure Sterling and Lawson didn't destroy evidence. So you staged Trevor's disappearance. Yes, to draw Lawson out, make Lauren think she was safe. Harrison crossed her arms. It worked. My stomach dropped. You knew I was here. We saw you meet with Bradley Lawson. We saw you come here. She gestured to the metal box, the letter still clutched in my hand. We needed to see where you'd go, what you'd find. Then you know, I said. My voice cracked. You know what Lauren did. Yes, Harrison's tone softened. We know. Rivera stepped forward, pulling on latex gloves. Mr. Gardner, I'm going to need you to hand over the letter, and anything else you found in that box. I looked down at the letter. Trevor's handwriting, his confession, his apology. Slowly I handed it to her. Rivera placed it carefully into an evidence bag, then began photographing the contents of the metal box, the printouts, the receipts, the photos of Lauren's search history. Harrison crossed her arms. Mr. Gardner, your son-in-law isn't missing. I blinked. What? Trevor Mason is alive. He's safe. We staged his disappearance. The basement tilted again. You staged it. Trevor came to us 2 weeks ago. Harrison said. He gave us everything evidence of your daughter's activities, the offshore accounts, the insurance fraud, the digitalis research. He told us what she'd done to your wife, what she was planning to do to you. I couldn't speak. Now we needed to draw out Bradley Lawson, Harrison continued. Make him think Trevor was vulnerable, a loose end. Lawson took the bait. He reached out to you, gave you that USB, tried to use you to clear his own name. So Trevor, I swallowed. He's been cooperating with you this whole time. Yes. He's in witness protection. He'll testify against your daughter and against Vincent Sterling and Bradley Lawson. And Lauren, Harrison's expression hardened. Your daughter was taken into custody this morning. Formal charges include conspiracy and the passing of Catherine Gardner, attempted harm against you, fraud, and more. I leaned against the filing cabinet, my chest tight. She's in custody. Yes. For how long? Mr. Gardner, the evidence is overwhelming. Trevor's testimony, the digitalis research, the insurance policy you didn't know about, the offshore accounts opened in your name. Harrison paused. Your daughter is facing life in prison. Life. The word hung in the air, heavy and final. I couldn't finish. I pressed my palm against my forehead, trying to hold myself together. I should have seen it. I should have known something was wrong. You couldn't have known, Harrison said gently. She was careful, methodical. She made it look like Catherine's passing was natural. She framed you to cover her tracks. If Trevor hadn't come forward, she might have gotten away with it. And me? I asked quietly. Would I have? Yes. Harrison's voice was steady. If you'd gone back to the lake house alone, if you'd trusted her, if you hadn't found that evidence, yes. She would have tried. I closed my eyes. $2 million. A fall. Drowning. An accident. Mr. Gardner. Harrison stepped closer. You weren't a suspect. You were never a suspect. You were a target. I opened my eyes and looked at her. Your daughter framed you to make herself look innocent, Harrison said. But you found the evidence. You brought it to us. You saved your own life. I wanted to feel relief. I wanted to feel something other than this hollow, crushing weight. But all I felt was loss. Catherine, Lauren, the life I'd thought I had, all of it gone. Harrison gestured to the stairs. Come on, let's get you out of here. Rivera and the other agents began securing the basement, photographing everything, bagging evidence. I followed Harrison up the concrete steps, out through the bulkhead door, into the cold afternoon light. The neighborhood was quiet. A few FBI vehicles parked at the curb, lights off, trying not to draw attention. Harrison opened the back door of one of the sedans. We'll take you back to the field office. There are a few more things we need to go over. And then, she paused. Then you'll be free to go. Free to go. I climbed into the car and sat there staring at my hands. Free to go where? Back to the lake house where my daughter had hidden evidence and planned my passing. Back to the apartment in Albany, where I'd spent the last 2 nights staring at the ceiling, wondering how my life had fallen apart. Back to a world where my wife was gone and my daughter was a stranger. Harrison got in the front seat. Rivera slid in beside her. The car started. We pulled away from the curb, and I sat in the back, silent, watching Lauren's house disappear behind us. I thought about the last time I'd been there. Christmas, less than a year ago. Lauren had cooked dinner, turkey, stuffing potatoes. Her son had opened presents. I'd helped him build a Lego set, while Lauren and Trevor cleaned up. It had felt normal, happy, but she'd already opened the insurance policy by then. Already been planning it. She'd smiled at me across the dinner table, raised her glass, and said, "To family." And I'd believed her. The drive to the field office was silent. I stared out the window, numb, watching the streets of Albany slide past. Afternoon light slanted through bare trees, cold and distant. The FBI building was a gray concrete structure downtown, anonymous and imposing. We pulled into the underground garage. Harrison opened my door. This way, she said quietly. I followed her through a maze of hallways, white walls, fluorescent lights, the hum of voices behind closed doors. Rivera walked beside me, her expression unreadable. We stopped outside a small room. Interrogation Room 3, the placard read. Harrison turned to me. Your daughter asked to see you. You don't have to go in if you don't want to. I swallowed. I need to. She nodded and opened the door. Lauren sat at a metal table, hands cuffed in front of her, resting on the cold surface. She wore street clothes, jeans, a gray sweater, but her hair was pulled back messily, and her face was pale drawn. No makeup, no pretense. She looked up when I walked in. Hi, Dad, she said. Her voice was flat, casual, like we were meeting for coffee. I stood there, frozen, my hand still on the door. Sit down, Harrison said gently, gesturing to the chair across from Lauren. I sat. Harrison stepped back, arms crossed, watching. Rivera stood by the door, tablet in hand. Lauren and I stared at each other across the table. Did you do it? I asked. My voice was hoarse. Did you give your mother something that made her sick? Yes, Lauren said. No hesitation, no shame. Why? She tilted her head, as if considering how to explain something obvious. She found out I'd been taking money from your retirement fund. Small amounts. Over 2 years. She said she'd go to the police. She said she'd have me arrested. My chest tightened. So you decided to… I had no choice, Lauren interrupted. If she went to the police, I'd lose everything. My job, my house, my reputation. I couldn't let that happen. You had a choice, I said, my voice breaking. You could have stopped. You could have told the truth. Lauren shrugged. The truth doesn't pay the bills, Dad. I closed my eyes, trying to hold myself together. The tea. You gave her tea every night. Digitalis, Lauren said matter-of-factly. From foxglove. I grew it in the garden, dried the leaves, ground them into powder, mixed a little into her chamomile tea every evening. For 6 months. It had to be slow. If it was sudden, the doctors would suspect. But slow, they'd just see an old woman with a weak heart. She paused. And they did. I opened my eyes and looked at her. She trusted you. She loved you. I know, Lauren said. No emotion, no regret. Just nothing. And me? I asked quietly. Were you going to do the same to me? Lauren leaned back in her chair, the cuffs clinking softly. The life insurance policy was Trevor's idea. But yes, I planned it. An accident at the lake house. A fall down the stairs. Drowning. Something that wouldn't raise questions. I'm your father. You were going to leave everything to charity. She said, her voice sharp now. Did you know that your will, I saw it, 80% to charity, 20% to me. After everything I did, everything I sacrificed, 20%. I stared at her. So you decided I should be gone too. You would have been comfortable. It would have looked natural. And I would have had the money I deserved. What about Trevor? I asked. Lauren's expression hardened. Trevor's weak. He found out about the digitalis after Mom was gone. He panicked, said we should go to the police. I told him if he said anything, I'd tell them he did it. That he forced me. He believed me. And when he went to the FBI, her jaw tightened. He betrayed me. After everything I did for him. He'll pay for that. I looked at her, this woman who looked like my daughter, but wasn't. Not anymore. You feel nothing, I said quietly. She met my gaze, cold and steady. I feel plenty, Dad. I just don't regret doing what I had to do. The door opened. Harrison stepped forward. That's enough. Mr. Gardner, if you'd step outside, please. 2 agents entered and lifted Lauren from her chair. She didn't resist. As they led her past me, she paused. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, she said. But I'm not sorry for what I did. Then she was gone. I sat there staring at the empty chair, my hands shaking. Harrison sat down across from me. "Mr. Gardner, I want to go over the formal charges so you understand what's happening." I nodded, numb. "Lauren Gardner is charged with conspiracy in the passing of Catherine Gardner, attempted harm against you, identity theft and fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud with Crown property holdings, and money-related offenses through questionable channels." "What does that mean?" I asked. "How long?" "She's facing life in prison," Harrison said. "With the evidence we have, Trevor's testimony, the digitalis research, the insurance fraud, she'll likely be convicted on all counts. Depending on the plea deal, she may be eligible for review after 24 years. But that's not guaranteed. 24 years. Lauren would be 62. Catherine would still be gone. And Trevor?" I asked. "Trevor Mason has accepted a plea deal. In exchange for his full cooperation and testimony, he won't face charges. He'll be placed in witness protection temporarily, then allowed to rebuild his life. He knew," I said quietly. "He knew what she did to Catherine, and he said nothing for 3 months." "I know," Harrison said, "but without his testimony, we wouldn't have enough to convict your daughter. Justice isn't always fair, Mr. Gardner, but it's what we have." "What about Sterling?" I asked. "And Lawson?" "Vincent Sterling is being charged separately: fraud, bribery, racketeering. He'll face federal court. Bradley Lawson is being charged with threatening a witness, conspiracy, and fraud. Both men will serve time." I nodded slowly. "And me?" Harrison's expression softened. "You're free to go, Mr. Gardner. You were never a suspect. You were a victim. Your daughter framed you. She planned to harm you. But you survived. You found the evidence. You did the right thing." I didn't feel like I'd done the right thing. I felt like I'd lost everything. Harrison stood. "If you need anything, counseling support, let us know. You've been through a lot." I stood too, my legs unsteady. "Thank you." She walked me to the elevator. Rivera handed me a card with a phone number. "Victim Services," she said quietly. I took it, slipped it into my pocket, and stepped into the elevator. The doors closed. I walked out of the FBI building into the cold afternoon. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the pavement. People hurried past, heads down, wrapped in coats and scarves, living their normal lives. I stood there alone, watching them. Catherine was gone. Lauren was going to prison. My family, everything I'd built, everything I'd believed in, was gone. And I had no idea what came next. Before we continue, just a quick note. Parts of the next segment include dramatized details for storytelling purposes and may not fully reflect real-life events. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with upcoming stories. And if this isn't for you, feel free to stop here, no pressure at all. 3 months later, I woke in a small apartment on the north side of Albany. January light filtered through thin curtains, pale and cold. Outside, the parking lot was covered in a thin layer of snow that had fallen overnight. I'd moved here in November, a week after I sold the lake house. I couldn't go back there. Every room held a memory I couldn't bear. Catherine planting mums in the garden. Lauren sitting at the kitchen table, smiling over tea. The wall where I'd swung a hammer and found the evidence that had shattered everything I thought I knew. The apartment was small, 1 bedroom, a kitchenette, a living room barely big enough for a couch and a coffee table. Most of my belongings were still in cardboard boxes stacked against the walls. I hadn't unpacked. I told myself I would eventually. But the truth was, I didn't see the point. This wasn't a home. It was just a place to sleep. The only thing I'd put out was a framed photo of Catherine sitting on the nightstand beside my bed. It was from our trip to Lake George 4 years ago, autumn 2019. She was smiling, her hair pulled back, her eyes bright. I looked at it every morning. And every morning it hurt. The past 3 months had been a blur of appointments and questions. Twice a week I sat in a therapist's office downtown. Dr. Ellen Ramos. Mid-50s, kind eyes, a patient voice. She asked me how I was feeling, what I was thinking, whether I was sleeping. I wasn't sleeping. I dreamed of Catherine every night. I dreamed of her sitting in the living room, drinking tea Lauren had made. I dreamed of foxglove flowers growing in the garden, their purple blooms swaying in the breeze. I dreamed of Lauren's face in the interrogation room, cold, empty, unrepentant. I'd wake up gasping, my heart pounding the sheets soaked with sweat. And I'd lie there in the dark, alone, staring at the ceiling until the sun came up. The FBI called me in for depositions. Agent Harrison, Agent Rivera lawyers I didn't know. Hours of questions in sterile conference rooms. What did you find in the wall? When did you first suspect your daughter? What did Trevor's letter say? Can you walk us through the timeline again? I answered, over and over. The same questions, the same answers. Jonathan called once a week from Chicago. He was busy trials cases, his fiancée. He offered to visit, to fly out and spend a weekend. But I told him not to. I didn't want company. I didn't know what I'd say to him if he came. I didn't know what to say to anyone anymore. I just existed. On a gray Tuesday afternoon in mid-January, my phone rang. I picked it up without looking at the number. Hello, Nicole? A woman's voice, unfamiliar, professional. My name is Taylor Bennett. I'm an investigative reporter with the Washington Post. I'd like to talk to you about the Crown Property Holdings case. I closed my eyes and leaned back against the couch. I've already talked to the FBI. I don't have anything else to say. I'm not asking you to talk about your daughter, she said quickly. I have information about Judge Vivian Sutherland, the judge assigned to oversee the Vincent Sterling case. I think you'll want to see it. I hesitated. What kind of information? The kind that could get her removed from the case and possibly taken into custody. I sat up. I'm listening. We met at a small coffee shop 2 blocks from my apartment. It was nearly empty, just a couple of college students hunched over laptops and an elderly man reading the newspaper by the window. Taylor Bennett was waiting at a corner table when I arrived. Mid-30s, sharp-eyed, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She wore a charcoal coat and carried a leather laptop bag. She stood and extended her hand. Mr. Gardner, thank you for coming. I shook her hand and sat down. What do you have? She didn't waste time. She pulled a manila folder from her bag and slid it across the table. Judge Vivian Sutherland. She's been assigned to oversee the Sterling trial, but she's compromised. I opened the folder. Bank statements, printouts of emails, property records. Over the past 3 years, Taylor said, leaning forward, Sterling's company has funneled more than $2 million to a law firm owned by Judge Sutherland's brother. The payments are labeled as consulting fees, but there's no record of any actual consulting work being done. No reports, no deliverables, just money moving from one account to another. I flipped through the pages, dates, transfers, amounts. In 2022, Taylor continued, Sutherland's brother purchased a house in Saratoga Springs, $1.5 million, paid in cash, no mortgage, no loan. Where does a small-town lawyer get that kind of money? I looked up at her. How did you get this? A whistleblower. Someone who used to work in Sterling's finance department. He came to me 6 months ago with a box of documents. I've been verifying everything since then, cross-referencing bank records, checking property titles, interviewing sources. Why me? I asked. Why not go straight to the FBI? Because I need someone they trust, Taylor said. Someone inside the case. You're a victim, Mr. Gardner. You're credible. If you take this to Agent Harrison, she'll listen. If I take it to her, she'll ask where I got it, and the story will die in legal red tape. I stared at the documents. If Sutherland is corrupt, Sterling could walk, or get a lighter sentence. And Lauren, I stopped. She deserves to be held accountable. They all do, Taylor nodded. That's why I came to you. I closed the folder. What do you need me to do? Take this to Agent Harrison. Tell her I have more documentation if she needs it. But it has to come from you. someone she trusts. I looked at the folder, then back at Taylor. Catherine deserved justice. If this judge is compromised, then everything, the trial, the evidence, the truth, it's all meaningless. Exactly. I picked up the folder. I'll take it to her today. I called Agent Harrison from the parking lot of the coffee shop. She answered on the second ring. Mr. Gardner, is everything all right? I need to see you. I have something you need to see. What is it? Evidence about Judge Sutherland. There was a pause. Come to the field office. I'll meet you in 30 minutes. Harrison was waiting for me in the same conference room where I'd given my depositions. She gestured to the chair across from her, and I sat down, sliding the folder across the table. A reporter gave this to me, I said. Taylor Bennett, Washington Post. She's been investigating Judge Sutherland. Harrison opened the folder and began reading. Her expression didn't change, but I saw her jaw tighten. After a few minutes, she looked up. This is serious, Mr. Gardner. If this is accurate, Judge Sutherland will be removed from the case immediately, and she'll face federal charges. Is it accurate? We'll verify it. But on the surface, yes, it looks credible. She closed the folder. Where did Bennett get this? A whistleblower, someone from Sterling's finance department. Harrison nodded slowly. We'll move fast on this. I'll keep you updated. What happens now? We'll cross-reference these bank records with our own files. If everything checks out, we'll present the evidence to the court. Sutherland will be removed, and we'll recommend charges. How long will that take? 2 weeks. Maybe less. Harrison stood. Mr. Gardner, you've just opened another investigation. I don't care about investigations, I said quietly. I care about justice, she nodded. I know. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. Agent Harrison. Mr. Gardner, I wanted to let you know Judge Vivian Sutherland has been removed from the Sterling case. She's been taken into custody. Federal charges accepting questionable payments, obstruction of the legal process. I exhaled slowly. And the trial. We have a new judge. Federal Judge Marcus Bennett. Clean record. No connections to Sterling or Lawson. The trial will proceed as scheduled. July. I repeated. You did the right thing, Mr. Gardner, Harrison said. Again. I hung up and sat there in the small apartment, staring at the phone in my hand. July. 6 months away. 6 more months of waiting. 6 more months of depositions and therapy and sleepless nights. But justice was coming, slowly, painfully. It was coming. I looked around the apartment, the bare walls, the unopened boxes, the photo of Catherine on the nightstand. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. A week after Agent Harrison's call, the mail came. I was sitting at the kitchen table, nursing my 3rd cup of coffee, and staring at nothing in particular, when I heard the metal slot in the apartment door rattle. A single envelope slid through and landed on the mat with a soft thud. I walked over, bent down, and picked it up. The return address was stamped in block letters, Federal Detention Center, Albany, New York. My hands started shaking before I even broke the seal. Inside were 4 pages handwritten in blue ink on lined yellow paper. The handwriting was Lauren's neat looping cursive with those distinctive rounded A's and O's, the same script she'd used to write thank you notes when she was 10. The same script Catherine had taught her at the kitchen table on Sunday afternoons. But the words on these pages were nothing like those innocent cards. Dad, I'm so sorry. I know those words mean nothing now. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't even deserve this paper, this pen, this chance to write to you. But I need you to know the truth. Trevor manipulated me from the start. He knew I was drowning in debt from Mom's medical bills, co-pays, specialist visits, the prescriptions that insurance wouldn't cover. He knew I resented you for the will. You left 80% of your estate to charity, Dad. 80%. I told myself you didn't trust me, that you thought I was irresponsible, that you loved strangers more than you loved your own daughter. Trevor fed that resentment. He planted the idea in my head slowly over months. He made it sound reasonable, logical, like I was just taking back what should have been mine all along, like I was protecting my son's future. But I can't blame him for everything. I made my own choices. I went online and researched digitalis. I learned how it mimics heart failure. I learned the dosage. I brewed the tea myself. Every night for 6 months, I handed Mom that cup chamomile and lavender. She said it helped her sleep, and I watched her drink it. I watched her get weaker day after day. I watched her hands shake. I watched her struggle to breathe. And I didn't stop. I told myself it was for us, for my family, for the life we deserved. But I was lying to myself, Dad. I was lying the whole time. And then when it worked, when Mom was gone and the coroner wrote congestive heart failure on the death certificate, and no one suspected a thing, I thought I could do it again. Trevor said the insurance policy would solve everything. $2 million. A tragic accident at the lake house. You'd fall down the stairs or slip into the water at night, and no one would ever know. We'd be free. We'd be safe. We'd be rich. But Trevor got scared. He saw what I'd become. He saw me researching your routines, planning the trip, talking about the payout like it was already ours. And he couldn't live with it. So he went to the FBI. He gave them everything, the offshore accounts, the documents, the insurance policy, the digitalis research. He saved your life, Dad. I don't blame him. I blame myself. I know I can't undo what I did. I can't bring Mom back. I can't give you back the years I stole from both of you. I can't erase the nightmares I've caused you, the betrayal, the grief. But I'm asking for one thing. Just one. Please come see me. Just once. Let me say goodbye to your face. Let me tell you I'm sorry in person, not just on paper. Let me see you one last time before I spend the rest of my life behind bars. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking anyway. I love you, Dad. I always have. Even when I did these terrible things, some part of me still loved you. I know that doesn't make sense. I know it doesn't make it better. But it's the truth. Love, Lauren? I read the letter 3 times. Each time my hands shook harder. Each time my throat tightened a little more. She was sorry. She admitted everything. She even acknowledged that Trevor had tried to stop her, that he'd saved my life, but she'd still done it. She'd still taken Catherine from me. She'd still planned step by calculated step to take my life too, and now she wanted to see me. I didn't know what to do. The letter sat on the table in front of me for hours. I made more coffee. I walked to the window and stared out at the street. I paced the apartment until my legs ached. Finally, I did what I always did when the world felt too heavy. I called Jonathan. He picked up on the second ring. Uncle Will, you okay? I got a letter, I said. My voice sounded hollow even to me. From Lauren. There was a pause. What did it say? I told him. Every word, every line. The apology, the confession, the request. When I finished, Jonathan was quiet for a long moment. When Uncle Will, he said finally, his voice careful, you don't owe her anything. Not forgiveness, not closure, not a visit. She gave up that right when she put digitalis in Aunt Catherine's tea. I know, I said, but she's still my daughter. Jonathan sighed. Yeah, she is. What would you do? I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. Honestly, I don't know. But I do know this: if you go see her, it has to be for you. Not for her. Not to make her feel better or give her peace. You go because you need to. Because it'll help you move forward. Understand? Yeah, I whispered. I do. And Uncle Will? Yeah, you don't have to forgive her. Going to see her doesn't mean you're letting her off the hook. It just means you're closing the door on your terms, your way. Nobody else's. Thanks, Jonathan. Call me after okay, no matter what you decide. I will. I hung up and sat in the dark kitchen for a long time. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of footsteps from the unit above. Catherine's photo was still on the nightstand in the bedroom. I walked over, picked it up, and studied her face in the dim light from the street lamp outside. She was smiling. It was a candid shot from a summer barbecue, probably 2018 or so back, when everything still felt normal. Her hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail. Her cheeks were pink from the sun, and she was laughing at something I'd said. I couldn't remember what it was anymore. What should I do, Catherine? I whispered. She didn't answer. Of course she didn't. But I knew what she'd say if she could. She'd tell me to do what felt right. Not what felt easy. Not what other people expected. Just what felt right in my gut, in my heart, in the part of me that still knew who I was. And the truth was, I needed to see Lauren. Not to forgive her. Not to make peace. Not to give her the closure she wanted. But to look her in the eye and tell her what she'd taken from me. To let her see the man she'd tried to destroy, and to show her that she'd failed. That I was still here. Still standing. Still breathing. I needed to close this chapter. On my terms. I also thought about Lauren as a child. I remembered teaching her to ride a bike on the driveway of our old house, running behind her, with my hand on the seat, letting go when she was ready. I remembered her 8th grade science fair project, a model volcano that actually erupted, covering the kitchen counter in baking soda lava. I remembered her high school graduation, the way she'd hugged Catherine and whispered, "I couldn't have done it without you, Mom." When had it all gone wrong? When had the little girl who baked cookies with her mother turned into someone who could plan her mother's death? I didn't have an answer. Maybe I never would. The next morning, I sat down at the kitchen table with a blank sheet of paper and a pen. My hand hovered over the page for a long time. I thought about writing more. Explaining my decision, setting conditions, telling her how much she'd hurt me. But in the end, I kept it simple. Lauren, I'll come once, that's all. Dad, I folded the paper carefully, slid it into an envelope, and wrote the detention center's address on the front in block letters. Then I pulled on my coat, walked downstairs, and headed to the mailbox on the corner. The morning air was cold and sharp. My breath fogged in front of me. A few cars passed on the street, their tires hissing on the wet pavement. I stood in front of the blue mailbox for a moment, the envelope in my hand, my heart pounding. Then I pulled open the slot and dropped it in. The metal door clanged shut. I stood there for a moment longer, staring at the box, my hand still raised, as if I could reach in and take the letter back. But I didn't. "Just once, Lauren," I whispered. "Just once." The detention center was a low gray building surrounded by chain-link fences and coils of razor wire. I parked in the visitor's lot, killed the engine, and sat for a moment staring at the concrete walls. I'd driven here on autopilot. I barely remembered the route. My hands were numb on the steering wheel, my chest tight. This was it, the last time I'd ever see my daughter. Inside, I passed through security, emptied my pockets, walked through the metal detector, signed the visitor log. A guard in a navy blue uniform led me down a narrow hallway that smelled of disinfectant and stale air. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Every door we passed was locked, every window barred. Finally, we reached the visiting room. It was small and cold. A metal table bolted to the floor. 2 plastic chairs facing each other. A tiny window high on the wall covered with steel mesh. The walls were painted a dingy gray-white. Everything felt hollow. Empty. The guard gestured to one of the chairs. "Sit. She'll be out in a minute." I sat. My hands rested on the cold table. I could hear my own heartbeat. A few minutes later, the door on the opposite side of the room opened. Lauren stepped in. She was wearing an orange jumpsuit, the fabric faded and wrinkled. Her wrists were cuffed in front of her, the chain clinking softly with each step. Her hair, once a bright, healthy blonde, was streaked with gray, pulled back in a loose ponytail. She'd lost weight. Maybe 15 pounds. Her cheeks were hollow, her eyes ringed with dark circles. She looked like a stranger. The guard unlocked her cuffs and stepped back outside, stationing himself by the door. Through the small window in the door, I could see him watching. Lauren sat down slowly. Her hands rested on the table, palms down. She stared at them. She didn't look at me. Neither of us spoke. The silence stretched. 2 minutes. Maybe 3. It felt like an hour. Finally, Lauren lifted her eyes. They were red, glassy. She'd been crying. "Dad!" she whispered. Her voice was hoarse. "Thank you for coming." I didn't say anything. I didn't trust my voice yet. She took a shaky breath. "I know you didn't have to. I know I don't deserve it." "Yeah, I know," I said quietly. "You don't." She flinched, but she nodded. "You're right." Another silence. Then she spoke again, her voice barely audible. "I did it, Dad. I put the digitalis in Mom's tea. Every night for 6 months. I watched her get weaker. I watched her hands shake. I watched her struggle to breathe. And I didn't stop." Her hands trembled on the table. "No one forced me. Trevor didn't make me do it. I did it. Me." I felt something crack inside my chest, but I kept my face still. "Why, money," she said simply. "The insurance, the inheritance. I told myself it was for my son, for his future. But it wasn't. It was for me. I wanted the life I thought I deserved, and I was willing to—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "I was willing to do anything to get it." She kept talking. The words poured out of her like a confession she'd been holding in for years. She told me about Trevor, how he'd started dating her in 2019 right after Catherine's first doctor's appointment, how he'd showered her with gifts and compliments, at first love bombing, Jonathan had called it, how he'd slowly, carefully convinced her that her family was holding her back. He'd say things like, "Your parents don't appreciate you. They're draining you financially. You're sacrificing everything for them, and what do you get in return?" Lauren's voice was flat, mechanical. At first I pushed back. I defended you. But he kept saying it. Over and over. And eventually, I started to believe him. She paused, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "He made me feel like I was the victim. Like you and Mom were the problem. And when he suggested the digitalis, when he showed me the research, the dosage, how easy it would be, I didn't say no. But you could have," I said. My voice was cold. Harder than I meant it to be. "I know." She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "I know, Dad. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Trevor manipulated me. He gaslighted me. He made me doubt everything I knew. But in the end, I chose to believe him. I chose to do it. I brewed the tea. I handed it to Mom. I watched her die." Her voice broke. "And then I planned to do the same thing to you." I couldn't breathe. The room felt too small, the walls pressing in. "The lake house," she continued. "The insurance policy. Trevor and I planned it together. We were going to stage an accident. Make it look like you fell down the stairs or slipped into the water. And then we'd collect $2 million and disappear." She closed her eyes. "But Trevor couldn't go through with it. He saw what I'd become. He saw me researching your routines, planning every detail, talking about the payout like it was already ours, and he couldn't live with it. So he went to the FBI." She opened her eyes and looked at me. "He saved your life, Dad. Not me. Him." I sat there staring at my daughter. This woman who'd killed my wife, who'd planned to kill me, who looked so much like Catherine it made my chest ache. "I'm sorry," Lauren whispered. "I'm so sorry. But I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know that. I'm not asking for it." "Then why am I here?" I asked. "Because I needed to say goodbye," she said. And because you needed to hear the truth, not from the FBI, not from a lawyer, from me. I took a long breath. My hands were shaking now, too. You're my daughter, Lauren, I said quietly. I love you. I always will. That doesn't just go away. Her face crumpled. She sobbed, covering her mouth with her hand. But I can't be in your life anymore. I continued. I can't do this. I can't sit across from you and pretend that what you did is something I can forgive and move past. I know, she choked out. I do forgive you, I said. But not for you. For me. So I can move on. So I can live again. So I don't spend the rest of my life carrying this weight. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. But I'll never see you again, Lauren. This is goodbye. She nodded again. Goodbye, Dad. I stood. The plastic chair scraped against the concrete floor, the sound echoing in the small room. I didn't look back. I walked to the door. The guard opened it, and I stepped through. The electronic lock buzzed behind me, sealing the room. I walked down the hallway, through security, out the front doors. The February air hit me like a slap. Cold. Sharp. The sky above Albany was gray and overcast, heavy with the promise of snow, but my chest felt lighter. Not healed, not whole, but lighter. Like I'd set down a weight I'd been carrying for months. I walked to my car, got in, and sat for a moment. My hands on the wheel, my breath fogging the windshield. Then I started the engine and drove away. I didn't look back. 6 months later, I stood outside the federal courthouse in Albany. It was July. The sun was bright and harsh, beating down on the white granite steps. The building loomed above me, columns marble, the American flag snapping in the wind. Reporters clustered near the entrance cameras, ready notebooks open. I walked past them without a word. Jonathan was beside me, his hand on my shoulder. You ready, Uncle Will? I nodded. I wasn't, but it didn't matter. Ready or not, this was happening. Inside the courtroom was all dark oak and high ceilings. Rows of wooden benches stretched toward the front, where the judge's bench sat elevated and imposing. To the right, the jury box, 12 empty seats waiting. To the left, the defendant's table. Lauren sat there flanked by her lawyer. She wore a gray suit they'd given her for the trial. Her hair was still streaked with gray, pulled back in a bun. She looked thin, hollow. She didn't look at me when I walked in. Next to her sat Vincent Sterling, silver-haired, cold-eyed, dressed in an expensive charcoal suit, and Bradley Lawson, fidgeting nervously, his lawyer, whispering in his ear. I took my seat in the witness gallery. Jonathan sat beside me. The room filled slowly, more reporters, FBI agents, a few curious members of the public. Then the bailiff called out, "All rise, the Honorable Judge Marcus Bennett presiding." We stood. The judge entered, robes flowing, and took his seat. The trial began. I testified on the first 2 days. The prosecutor, a sharp woman in her 40s named Harrison, walked me through everything. Finding the fresh wallpaper, checking the security footage, breaking open the wall, the metal box, the documents, the offshore account. "And what did you do next, Mr. Gardner?" "I called my daughter," I said. "She begged me not to go to the police. She said Trevor was in danger, but I didn't believe her. I went anyway." Harrison nodded. "And then what happened?" I told them about the chase, the black SUVs, the threatening messages, meeting Lawson, finding Trevor's letter in Lauren's basement. "What did the letter say?" Harrison asked. I took a breath. "It said Lauren had been planning to—" I stopped, corrected myself. "To harm me, for a $2 million insurance policy." "And did you confront your daughter about this?" "Yes, in the detention center. She admitted everything." The defense attorney objected, tried to argue that my testimony was hearsay, but the judge overruled. My words stood. On the third day, Harrison presented the evidence. First, Catherine's medical records. A forensic pathologist took the stand, explained that archived blood samples had been retested. The digitalis levels were dangerously high, 2 nanograms per milliliter. Fatal over time. This is consistent with chronic digitalis poisoning over a period of several months, the pathologist said. Next, Lauren's search history. Projected onto a screen for the jury to see. Digitalis dosage, undetectable poisons, how to fake heart failure, life insurance payout after natural death. The jury stared. A few of them glanced at Lauren. She kept her eyes down. Then the text messages between Lauren and Trevor. Lauren, the lake house. Stairs. Make it look natural. Trevor, what about the insurance? Lauren, $2 million. We split it. Trevor, when Lauren soon. He's coming in October. Harrison let the silence hang. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this was not an accident. This was premeditated, calculated, cold-blooded. She presented the forged insurance documents, the offshore account, the payments from Sterling's shell companies. On the 5th day, Trevor took the stand. He looked older than I remembered, thinner, tired. He wouldn't look at Lauren. Mr. Mason, Harrison said, tell the jury how you met the defendant. Trevor cleared his throat. I met Lauren in 2019. I was working for Vincent Sterling. He asked me to get close to her because her father owned property Sterling wanted. He explained the manipulation, the love bombing, the gaslighting, how he'd convinced Lauren that her family was holding her back. And did you suggest the digitalis? Harrison asked. Yes, Trevor said quietly. I showed her the research. I told her it would mimic heart failure, but she... He stopped, swallowed. She chose to do it. I didn't force her. Lauren's lawyer stood, objected, tried to argue that Trevor was the real mastermind. But Trevor didn't back down. I manipulated her, he said. I accept that. But she made the final choice. She brewed the tea. She gave it to her mother, night after night, for 6 months. I watched Lauren's face. It didn't change. She just stared at the table in front of her. Trevor continued. After Catherine passed, I thought it was over. But Lauren wanted more. She planned the accident at the lake house. She wanted her father's insurance. I couldn't go through with it, so I went to the FBI. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Then the jury deliberated for 3 days. When they returned, the courtroom was packed. I sat in the front row, Jonathan beside me. My hands were clenched in my lap. The foreman stood. In the case of the United States versus Vincent Sterling on all 43 counts, we find the defendant guilty. Sterling's face remained blank. His lawyer scribbled notes. In the case of the United States versus Bradley Lawson, we find the defendant guilty. Lawson dropped his head into his hands. Then, in the case of the United States versus Lauren Gardner on all counts, we find the defendant guilty. I didn't feel anything. Not relief, not grief. Just emptiness. Judge Bennett read the sentences. Vincent Sterling, you are hereby sentenced to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Sterling stood, expression unchanged, and was led away. Bradley Lawson, you are sentenced to 15 years. Lawson was crying. The guards took him. Then the judge turned to Lauren. Lauren Gardner, you are sentenced to life in prison with eligibility for review after 24 years. 24 years. She'd be 62. If she lived that long. Lauren stood. For the first time since the trial began, she looked at me. Her eyes were red, but she didn't cry. She just nodded once. Then the guards led her away. Outside, the reporters swarmed. Mr. Gardner, how do you feel? Do you forgive your daughter? What's next for you? I stood on the courthouse steps, the July sun blazing overhead, cameras flashing in my face. Jonathan stood beside me, trying to guide me toward the car, but I just stood there, still. staring at the crowd, at the microphones, at the strangers asking me to sum up the worst year of my life in a soundbite. I had no words. I felt hollow, empty, like everything inside me had been carved out, and there was nothing left but silence. Jonathan squeezed my shoulder. "Come on, Uncle Will, let's go." I nodded. We walked down the steps through the crowd and got into the car. I didn't look back. October 2024. 3 years since Catherine died. 1 year since I found the evidence hidden in the wall. I drove to Pinewood Memorial Cemetery on a cold, gray morning. The trees along the road were aflame with autumn colors, red, gold, orange, but the sky overhead was heavy and overcast, threatening rain. I parked near the entrance and walked through the iron gates carrying a bouquet of white roses. 12 of them. Her favorite. The cemetery was quiet. A few other visitors wandered among the headstones, but most of the graves were empty, forgotten. I walked past rows of granite markers, past names I didn't recognize, until I reached the far corner of the grounds. There, beneath a tall maple tree, was Catherine's grave. The headstone was simple, gray granite polished smooth. Her name and dates carved into the stone. Catherine Louise Gardner, 1960 to 2021. Beloved wife, mother, and friend. Her light still shines. The grass around the grave was green and neatly trimmed. A few old flowers, wilted and brown, lay near the base of the stone. I'd been here a few months ago, right after the trial, but today felt different. Today I needed to talk to her. I knelt down in front of the headstone and set the white roses gently on the grass. My hands were shaking. I didn't know where to start. "Hey, Catherine," I said quietly. My voice cracked. "It's me." The wind rustled through the maple leaves above. A few drifted down, landing on the grave. I took a breath. "I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you a long time ago." I paused, staring at her name carved into the stone. "Our daughter, Lauren, she's the one who did this to you." The words felt like stones in my throat. "She put digitalis in your tea. Every night. For 6 months. She watched you get weaker. She watched you struggle to breathe. And she didn't stop." My eyes burned. "She planned it, Catherine. She researched the dosage. She learned how to make it look like heart failure. And then..." I stopped, swallowed hard. "Then she planned to do the same thing to me." I closed my eyes, felt the tears slip down my cheeks. "She's in prison now. Life sentence. She won't get out for at least 24 years. Maybe never." I sat back on my heels, wiping my face with the back of my hand. I forgave her, Catherine. Not for her, for me. So I could let go. So I could stop carrying this anger everywhere I went. I stared at the roses, their white petals soft and perfect. But I can't love her the way I used to. I can't look at her and see the little girl we raised, the one who used to bake cookies with you on Sunday afternoons. The one who cried when she scraped her knee. The one who hugged you so tight she could barely breathe. I shook my head. All I see now is what she did to you. And I don't know if I'll ever see anything else. The silence stretched. A crow cawed somewhere in the distance. The wind picked up cold against my face. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry, Catherine. I should have protected you. I should have noticed something was wrong. I should have asked more questions. Maybe if I'd been paying attention, if I'd been there, I could have stopped it." My voice broke. "I failed you. I let you down." I pressed my palm against the cold stone, feeling the rough texture of the granite under my hand. "I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know if you're out there somewhere watching. But if you are, I hope you can forgive me." I stayed there for a long time, kneeling in the grass, the cold seeping into my knees. I thought about all the years we'd had together. 38 years of marriage. 38 years of laughter and arguments and quiet Sunday mornings and road trips and late-night talks and all the little moments that make a life. I thought about the picnic we'd had at Lake George when Lauren was 9. Catherine had spread out a checkered blanket, and Lauren had chased butterflies while I grilled hamburgers. Catherine had held my hand and smiled at me, her eyes bright with happiness. "This is perfect," she'd said. "I don't need anything else." I thought about Lauren's college graduation. Catherine had been so proud. She'd thrown a small party at the house, invited all our friends, and told everyone who would listen that her daughter was going to do great things. "She's brilliant, Will. She's going to change the world." "You were wrong, Catherine. She didn't change the world. She destroyed ours." I thought about the last summer we'd spent together before she got sick. Catherine had planted white roses in the garden, and I'd helped her dig the holes. She'd looked up at me, dirt on her hands, and said, "When I'm gone, bring me white roses." Okay, they're my favorite. I hadn't thought she'd be gone so soon. Eventually, I sat down on the grass, leaning back against the maple tree. The October air was cool and crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and damp earth. The sky was still gray, but the rain hadn't come yet. I felt something shift inside me. Not happiness, not closure, but something quieter, softer, acceptance. I couldn't change what had happened. I couldn't bring Catherine back. I couldn't rewrite the past or undo Lauren's choices, but I could choose how I moved forward. I could choose to really live instead of just surviving. Catherine would have wanted that. She'd always been the one who pushed me to take risks, to try new things, to stop worrying so much about what might go wrong. "Life's too short, Will," she used to say. "Don't waste it." I wasn't going to waste it. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and glanced at the screen. "Jonathan," I answered. "Hey, Uncle Will." Jonathan's voice was warm, concerned. "Where are you?" "At the cemetery," I said. "With Catherine." There was a pause. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "I think I am." Another pause. Then, "Listen, Thanksgiving's coming up in a few weeks. Why don't you come to Chicago, stay with me and Sarah for a few days? Get out of Albany for a while." I hesitated. "I don't want to intrude." "You're not intruding," Jonathan said firmly. "You're family, and we'd love to have you. Sarah's already planning the menu. She's going to cook enough food to feed an army." I smiled despite myself. Yeah. So what do you say?" I looked at Catherine's headstone, at the white roses I'd placed there, at the name carved into the stone. And I thought about what she would say if she were here. She'd tell me to go. She'd tell me to be with the people who loved me. She'd tell me to stop hiding in that lonely apartment and start living again. "Okay," I said. "I'll come." "Good." I could hear the relief in Jonathan's voice. "I'll book your flight. We'll pick you up at O'Hare." "Thanks, Jonathan." "Anytime, Uncle Will, anytime." I hung up and stood slowly brushing the grass from my pants. I knelt down one last time, arranging the white roses carefully at the base of the headstone. Then I leaned forward and pressed my lips to the cold granite. "Goodbye, Catherine," I whispered. "I'll live well for you, I promise." I stood and walked away, leaving her there beneath the maple tree. The yellow and red leaves drifted down around me, carpeting the ground in color. I didn't turn around. I didn't look back at the grave. But I carried her with me, her memory, her love, her laughter tucked safe inside my heart. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was going to be okay. 3 weeks later, I flew to Chicago. Jonathan picked me up at O'Hare. I spotted him through the crowd, tall, dark-haired, wearing a navy coat and a wide smile. Beside him stood a young woman with shoulder-length brown hair and warm hazel eyes. Melissa, his fiancée. "Uncle Will." Jonathan pulled me into a hug, clapping me on the back. "You made it!" "Wouldn't miss it," I said. Melissa stepped forward, extending her hand. "Mr. Gardner, it's so good to finally meet you. Jonathan's told me so much about you. I shook her hand, smiled. Please call me Will, and thank you for having me. Of course, she said warmly. We're glad you're here. The drive into the city was quiet and easy. Jonathan navigated the traffic with practiced ease, Melissa chatting from the passenger seat about the Thanksgiving menu she'd been planning for weeks. I sat in the back, watching the Chicago skyline rise in the distance, steel and glass glittering in the cold November sun. How are you doing, Uncle Will? Jonathan asked, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. Better, I said, taking it one day at a time. He nodded. That's all you can do. Their apartment was on the 5th floor of a brick building in Lincoln Park. It was cozy and modern, tall windows overlooking the tree-lined street, hardwood floors, warm lighting. The kitchen smelled incredible. Turkey roasting cinnamon and nutmeg from the pumpkin pie, the rich scent of butter and herbs. Make yourself at home, Melissa said, gesturing toward the living room. Dinner won't be ready for another hour or so. I set my bag down and sank into the couch. Jonathan handed me a beer, cracked one open for himself, and sat down beside me. Yusunan, he said. What's new? I took a sip, considered the question. Actually, I've been meaning to tell you. I started volunteering. Jonathan raised his eyebrows. Yeah, with what? Engineers Without Borders, I said. The Albany chapter. I'm teaching math and basic engineering to high school kids in underserved communities. Jonathan's face broke into a grin. Uncle Will, that's amazing. I shrugged. It's not much. Just a couple hours a week. But it feels good to use my skills for something positive. Something that helps people instead of just sitting around feeling sorry for myself. Melissa appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a towel. That's wonderful, Will. Those kids are lucky to have you. I don't know about that, I said. But it gives me something to do. A reason to get up in the morning. Jonathan leaned forward, his expression serious. You're turning your pain into something meaningful. That takes strength. I didn't know what to say to that. So I just nodded and took another sip of beer. Dinner was everything I'd hoped it would be. The table was set with care, white plates, cloth napkins, candles flickering in the center. Melissa had outdone herself, roast turkey with crispy golden skin, mashed potatoes drowning in gravy, green beans with almonds, cranberry sauce, warm cornbread, and a pumpkin pie cooling on the counter. We sat down and Jonathan said a few words of thanks. I'm grateful for family, he said, glancing between Melissa and me. For second chances, and for having Uncle Will here with us. Amen, Melissa added softly. We ate slowly, savoring the food and the warmth of the moment. The conversation flowed easily. Melissa told funny stories about her law firm. Jonathan complained about a difficult case at work, and I found myself laughing more than I had in months. At some point, Melissa asked me about Catherine. Jonathan says she was an amazing woman, Melissa said gently. I wish I could have met her. I smiled, though my chest tightened. She was. She had this way of making everyone around her feel special, like they mattered. She could walk into a room full of strangers and leave with a dozen new friends. What was your favorite Thanksgiving with her? Melissa asked. I thought for a moment. Probably 2018. We hosted at the lake house. Catherine cooked for 2 days straight. She made this ridiculous stuffing recipe she'd found online, sausage apples, cranberries, all sorts of things. It was a complete disaster, Jonathan laughed. I remember that. Aunt Catherine called me and said she'd invented a new form of kitchen chaos. I grinned. Yeah, but we ate it anyway, and we laughed until our sides hurt. That's what I miss most, the laughter. The little moments that don't seem important until they're gone. Melissa reached across the table and squeezed my hand. She sounds like she was wonderful. She was, I said quietly. After dinner, Jonathan and I moved to the living room while Melissa cleaned up. We settled onto the couch, full and content, watching the lights twinkle on the street below. I'm Uncle Will, Jonathan said after a moment. Can I ask you something? Of course. He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Do you regret it? Going to the police? Turning in Lauren? Everything that happened after? I was quiet for a long moment. It was a question I'd asked myself 100 times. "Oh no," I said finally. "I don't regret it." Jonathan turned to look at me, waiting. If I hadn't done the right thing, if I'd hidden the evidence, if I'd let her get away with it, I wouldn't be able to live with myself. I continued. What Lauren did was wrong. What she did to Catherine, what she planned to do to me, it was evil. And I couldn't let that go unpunished. I took a breath. I still love her. Part of me always will. She's my daughter. But I did the right thing. And I'd do it again. Jonathan nodded slowly, then placed his hand on my shoulder. "I'm proud of you, Uncle Will. That took real courage." "I don't know about courage," I said. "I just knew I couldn't live with myself if I didn't." "That's courage," Jonathan said firmly. We spent the rest of the evening watching football, the Dallas Cowboys playing whoever they were matched against that year. Melissa joined us on the couch, curling up next to Jonathan with a slice of pumpkin pie. We shouted at the TV, argued about bad calls, laughed at the ridiculous commercials. For the first time since Catherine died, I felt normal. Like I wasn't just surviving, I was living. Like I was part of a family again, instead of just a man alone in an empty apartment. It felt good. The next morning, I packed my bag and said my goodbyes. Jonathan and Melissa walked me down to the rental car I'd picked up the night before. "Drive safe, Uncle Will," Jonathan said, pulling me into another hug. "I will." Melissa hugged me too. "Come back anytime. You're always welcome." "Thank you," I said, "for everything." I got into the car, started the engine, and pulled away from the curb. In the rearview mirror, I could see Jonathan and Melissa standing on the sidewalk, waving. Jonathan's arm was around her shoulders. They looked happy. Whole. I smiled. I wasn't alone. I still had family. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. December 2024. 1 year later. Snow fell quietly over Albany. I stood at the window of my apartment watching the flakes drift down, covering the street in white. It had been 14 months since I found that evidence hidden in the wall. 14 months since my world fell apart. But standing here now, I realized something I'd survived. Looking back on this entire journey, this painful, devastating family story, I see things I wish I'd done differently. I wish I'd paid more attention. I wish I'd asked more questions when Catherine started getting sick. I wish I'd recognized the warning signs earlier. But here's what I've learned. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, investigate. Don't ignore the small inconsistencies, the strange behaviors, the gut feelings that whisper, something's not right. In my case, those instincts could have saved Catherine's life. This Grandpa Stories moment, the one I'm sharing with you now, isn't just about betrayal or justice. It's about the fragility of trust, the weight of truth, and the courage it takes to do what's right, even when it costs you everything. Every family story has its shadows, and ours was darker than most. My advice: don't be like me. Don't wait until it's too late. If you love someone, protect them. Watch for the signs. Ask the hard questions. And if you discover something terrible, something that shatters your world, don't hide from it. Face it. Report it. Choose truth over comfort, even when the truth destroys you. I also learned this: forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about you. I forgave Lauren not because she deserved it, but because I needed to let go. Holding on to that anger would have consumed me. So I released it. I let it go. And in doing so, I found peace. As I rebuild my life teaching kids engineering, spending holidays with Jonathan and Melissa, finding purpose again, I think about Catherine every day. I think about the life we had, the family story we built together, and the daughter we raised. I think about where it all went wrong, and I think about God. I'm not a deeply religious man, but I believe God puts us through trials for a reason. Maybe this was mine, to learn forgiveness, to find strength I didn't know I had. to help others avoid the same mistakes. I don't have all the answers, but I have faith that there's meaning in this suffering, that Catherine's memory will live on through the good I do now. So here's my final thought. My last piece of Grandpa Stories, wisdom, life is fragile. The people we love can surprise us sometimes in beautiful ways, sometimes in devastating ones. Cherish the good moments. Protect the vulnerable. And when the worst happens, choose to rise. Choose to live. Choose to move forward even when every part of you wants to give up. Because in the end, that's all we can do. Keep going, keep loving, keep hoping. Even in the darkest times, there's still light ahead. I'm William Gardner. This is my Grandpa Stories. And I'm still here. Thank you for walking this entire journey with me, step by painful step. I'd love to hear your perspective. Please drop a comment below. What would you do if you found yourself in William's shoes? How would you handle discovering such a devastating truth about someone you love? Your thoughts mean the world to me. And I read every single one. If this story resonated with you in any way, please consider subscribing so you won't miss future stories that explore the complex, often heartbreaking realities of family trust and justice. A gentle reminder, while inspired by real-life themes of betrayal, justice, and family dynamics, certain elements have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. If this narrative doesn't align with your preferences, feel free to explore other content that better suits your interests. Thank you for understanding.